Question number 62, Shri M.K. Raghavan.
Question number 62, sir.
Statement is laid on the table of the House.
Respected Speaker, sir, thank you for giving me this opportunity. Sir, the US government has recently announced that it would end the privileges that India enjoys under the Generalized System of Preference, GSP, starting from 5th June 2019. The GSP implemented since 1974 is the largest and oldest US trade preference scheme, and it allows duty-free imports for thousands of products from designated countries, beneficiaries like India. Sir, out of the total exports of 48 billion US dollar, we export worth of 6.3 billion US dollar to US under GSP. Unfortunately, the withdrawal decision of GSP will have a reasonable impact on our exports. Sir, this action under GSP is an indicator of tough trade position by the US against India. I think India's loss of GSP status is a diplomatic, not an economic setback. So I would like to know from the Honorable Minister how the government proposes to address the trade-related discontent, which will definitely grow into a bilateral trade dispute in the near future, and how India will negotiate to restore the GSP benefits.
Honorable Speaker, sir, it's important for the House and the people of India to know that the generalized system of preferences have been offered by the United States of America, of course, for the last almost 45 years, probably from the year 1975, which was also referred to yesterday. But it was largely a non-discriminatory and unilateral concession that the United States started giving to the less developed, the least developed countries, to the developing countries, who at that point of time were in great deal of difficulty. Over a period of time, that has certainly helped India also evolve, export more products to the United States. But as we have seen in the last few years, India and Indian industry is standing on its own feet, is becoming very competitive, is able to compete with the rest of the world on its own terms, on the strength of its competitiveness, on the strength of its comparative advantages. And today, though, in the overall context of things where we have an export of nearly over $50 billion, that's to the US alone, which is nearly in rupee terms about 4 lakh crore rupees, the GSP preference that we were enjoying was being enjoyed in a very few products, all of which totaled only about 40,000 crores out of this larger basket, 42,000 crores. Another thing to be noted is that even out within this 42,000 crore export basket, nearly 2/3 of the products were getting benefit which was under 4%. Now, Indian industry is not so weak that we will be not able to compete on the withdrawal of a GSP benefit which amounted to such a small amount. So at the outset, I would like to state that US has taken a unilateral position. We believe that it's not exactly as per the norms of WTO and GATT, which have been mutually agreed and which are multilateral trade agreements. But having said that, obviously these are issues that come up in international trade. From time to time, countries have to engage with each other. There is always trade discussions and negotiations going on. But one thing is very clear. This government, led by Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi, will never, ever compromise on national security and national sovereignty. And at no point of time will trade negotiations be allowed to overtake what is in the national interests and interests of the people of India. Obviously, trade negotiations are going on. This particular step happened during the midst of the elections, when obviously the model code of conduct was in place and we were all in this House also busy with the election process. And soon after the new government was sworn in on the 30th of May, the United States took the decision on the 31st of May to withdraw the GSP concessions on 5th June. We are in dialogue with the United States. We have a very, very strong and healthy relationship with the United States of America, the world's oldest democracy. We are the world's largest democracy. Two large democracies engage with each other on very strong people-to-people ties, leader-to-leader ties, and nation-to-nation ties. And I have no doubt in my mind that going forward, the diplomatic engagement and the trade engagement with the United States will only get stronger and better in the years to come. I can assure the entire House through you, sir, and the people of India. India engages with the United States on a number of diplomatic, strategic, trade issues, all of which are on the basis of sovereign interests of the country. Both countries protect their mutual trade and business interests. Both countries protect their strategic interests. And given the relationship that have been developed in the last 5 years with the United States, we have today a strong strategic partnership with the United States of America.
माननीय सदस्य सब
Speaker, sir, we also know that the US has been pressurizing India to extend patent protection of chemical and pharmaceutical products by giving this olive branch of GSP. We should understand that the matters like GSP are a double-edged sword. India is already facing several cases in the WTO dispute settlement body. My second question is, will the Honorable Minister be pleased to say what steps will be taken to recalibrate the approach which could enhance the competitiveness of Indian exports, and also will this subject to be discussed in the upcoming meeting between Honorable Prime Minister and President Trump on the sidelines of the G20?
Honorable Speaker, sir, as far as engaging with the different countries on different matters of trade, on patents, on services, these are all matters that are mutually discussed between different governments. Decisions are taken in national interest, protecting the overall interests of trade and business in the country. And I can assure the honorable members through you, sir, that as I said earlier, India will always ensure that Indian industry, business, trade is protected, is given due consideration when matters like this are discussed. I don't know where the honorable member got this information that we are trying to trade off the GSP revival with the patent laws. There's nothing like that on the table. I've had discussions. The government of India is continuously in a dialogue with the United States also, and never once has this issue cropped up. So I would urge the honorable members not to bring in issues based on hearsay or newspaper reports, especially when they are related to very delicate issues like international negotiations, international discussions, because that only serves to harm the interests of India and the interests of negotiations. Well, you have been in government for many years before we came in. I'm sure you will also appreciate that any such international disputes, any such international engagement, negotiations are best left to the people in the room rather than being discussed in the open house. Having said that, sir, the honorable member also raised the issue of supporting export. I can assure the honorable member, sir, that the government of India through the last 5 years has continuously given more and more concessions, has continuously sat and worked with the exporter community to see how we can strengthen their competitiveness. I had very detailed discussions with different sectors of export industry over the last 25 days that we have been in government in our second term. And since I took charge of this department, we've had extensive discussions with small traders, the Kirana store owner associations, with the small MSME industry associations to understand how we can help them become more competitive. I've had discussions with bankers, with financial institutions, Export Credit Guarantee Corporation, which supports exports through insurance. All of these engagements are helping us to further improvise the methodology and the delivery of support to make Indian exports more and more competitive.
श्री दीपक बेज
माननीय अध्यक्ष महोदय, मेरा प्रश्न है माननीय मंत्री जी से। अमेरिका से आने वाली वस्तुओं पर सीमा शुल्क लगाने के कारण क्या सस्ती दर पर भारतीय उपभोक्ताओं को वस्तुएं मिलेगी, इसके लिए सरकार क्या कदम उठा रही है, तथा जीएसपी हटाने के कारण भारतीय व्यापारियों तथा उत्पादकों पर इसका क्या असर होगा?
सर, वैसे जो अमेरिका ने किया है वो तो विड्रॉ किया है कंसेशन, जिससे भारत का जो निर्यात होता है एक्सपोर्ट, उसके ऊपर जो कंसेशन था वो विड्रॉ किया, तो उससे भारत के उपभोक्ताओं के ऊपर तो वास्तव में कोई असर पड़ने की संभावना है ही नहीं। उसका कोई हमारे जो भारत में अंदर आता है सामान, उसके साथ कोई संबंध नहीं है इस जीएसपी विड्रॉल का। और हमारा जो कंज्यूमर डिपार्टमेंट है जो प्राइजेस मॉनिटर करते रहते हैं पूरे समय, और वाणिज्य विभाग भी, ये दोनों साथ में संतुलन के साथ काम करते हैं। देश में कीमतों के ऊपर हमारी निगरानी लगातार लगी रहती है, और वास्तव में तो देश ने 5 साल, इस देश में पहली बार इतनी कम महंगाई की दर बढ़ने का जो दौर देखा है, अपने आप में ऐतिहासिक रहा है। कहाँ हम डबल डिजिट महंगाई, कभी 12%, कभी 14%, 1974-75 में तो कितना 34% महंगाई ग्रोथ हुई थी, 34%। तो वहाँ से लेके कहाँ 2014 से 19 के बीच महंगाई की दर 5 सालों में एवरेज सिर्फ 4-4.5% के करीब रही, और आजकल की महंगाई की दर तो शायद 3% से भी कम हो गई।
श्री मनीष तिवारी।
Speaker, sir, I heard the rather long filibustering answer which the Honorable Commerce Minister gave. I would just like to ask him that this GSP situation did not manifest itself while the Model Code of Conduct was in place. This is something which has been festering ever since President Trump took office in 2016. My specific question to the Honorable Commerce Minister is that when this had been festering since 2016, and you had a number of rounds of negotiations with the USTR, why was your government not able to handle this situation? And why did things come to such a pass that these GSPs had to be invoked? My second subset, if you would allow me, is to the Honorable Prime Minister and to the Foreign Minister, since they are here. Secretary Pompeo is in town today, the US Secretary of State. I would like to ask the Honorable Prime Minister, would he tell the Secretary of State when he meets him that this bullying and arm twisting by the United States of America will not be tolerated by India?
Double question.
Well, honorable member has been a member of the Union Cabinet before this government came in, and I'm sure he jolly well understands that when a minister gives a detailed reply, I think the House appreciates it. And if he calls it filibustering, I think it's an insult of the members of his own party who raised the question in the first place, whom I'm trying to address with a very detailed answer. And filibustering, Mr. Tiwari, is done in the United States Senate and not in India. Secondly, I don't know where where the honorable member gets his information that the United States was considering withdrawal of GSP since 2016. I have not read any news article, I have not read any information which gave us this clue that the United States was considering removing it since 2016. It's something which he may be privy to, maybe he has better contacts which keep giving him information about what's happening. But I must say that if at all I was to grant the honorable member that the United States was considering to withdraw this from 2016, Honorable Speaker, sir, I think it is only a recognition of the growing strength of India as an economy. Because the GSP was originally intended, as I explained to the member earlier, for the least developed countries, for the underdeveloped countries. It had a benchmark that it will only be for countries which are not in the definition of high-income countries. And therefore, if at all the United States has started looking at India from India's position of strength as a country which is developing rapidly, particularly in the last 5 years, I think it's a matter of pride for all the people of India.